Rate My Team Part 4, where I'm going to be running through some interesting teams here, giving some advice and looking at team lists here as well. So, first up, if you want to jump in, it's link in the description there. It's the Casual Athlete WOP. Jump onto that, and then you can send your team into Discord, and I'll give you a rating as well. Now, first up, we got Broths Bang Bus here. Funny team name. 8.5 out of 10 for mine. So, really strong backline. You got a couple of guys there, Dylan Lucas, Latrell Mitchell, some interesting pods, and Howard, Talangi, Yongi. We've got a strong pack there, deep bench here too. So as much as I don't really agree with Ilias and I'm a bit iffy on White, they are very strong starters. So you got Smith, Ilias, White, Pakes there, who are all going to be guys you can start in your 17. In terms of this side, it's a bit of an interesting one. Some of these pods really need to pan out. That's the big thing, right? So is Howarth, Blaze, and Ilias going to pan out? That's a big question here. 8.5 out of 10 for now, but it could slide down in the next week to be completely transparent. Next one, we've got Mitch with Drinky's Dream. And for this side, it's a really strong forward pack. So Terrell Mayer's captain there. We've got Angus Crichton stepping in as well. Yo Watson, obviously, too. Ponga Drinkwater stack, which is really nice to have. And then the Starling pod. So on the bench in Internet Interchange 2 spot, Tommy Starling. Now, I'm not confident on the minutes for Starling. So you did lose about a 0.5 on Starling there. The other thing is Anand down the bottom of the bench in emergency 8 spot. He's a guy who I'm probably not expecting to have meaningful minutes this year either. So 8 out of 10 for me, but there's a lot of good ingredients in this side. And if you can fix up those couple of things, then you're in a great spot. Moody coming in with an 8 out of 10 side. So this starting team is fantastic, right? So you go into the back row, Ola Kawatu, you got Gus Crichton as vice captain. They're both pretty big pods there. You've got the Turbo and Ponga duo down at wing fullback. Luai, so Luai versus Munster, that's a big question right now. Luai is one that a lot of people are jumping onto. And then looking at the rest of the team here, it's pretty good, right? So the middle forward set is really nice. Cleary captain, obviously, as well. A bit light in the centers there. But if we get to the bench, this is where it goes downhill. So as much as the first three options are pretty good, Williams, I'm not sure what he's doing at the Titans. I can't expect many minutes. And then add a player in spot 5, just there. That's iconic. I wonder who that's going to be. I don't know who it is yet, though. So I'm going to call this an 8 out of 10. We'll see if we can update that one next week. All right, Liam, 1, 2, 3, 4. Interesting side again. So Yo as captain is a different move. If we go into the wing fullbacks as well, Pong is obviously pretty common. Yongi is too, but Pappenhausen's one that pops up in a few teams. It feels like people are either Team Pappenhausen or Team Garrick or Team Best. And they're sort of choosing between those three as that, 500s kind of pod there. In terms of the bench, it's really solid. So Fisher Harris sits there, Connor Watson sits there. I haven't seen many benches that have such strong middle forwards backing up, Isaiah Yo, Corey Horsburgh, Terrell May. So this is probably the deepest middle forward rotation I've seen so far. Do we want to do that as a strategy? I'm not totally against it. You really want flexibility in your forward pack, but yeah, this can work. And you've got some guys in the back line too. So you still have Cleary, you still have Ponga, you still have other guys who are going to start. So it's a different strategy. It's not necessarily good or bad, but 8.5 out of 10 is what I'm giving this team just because it is so different and it does give you a chance to make a shot at something. Then Demetrius Wong comes in with 2 different team variations. So first one here has Pakes as starter at hooker, the Yo Cleary stack, Nwangani Tuase on the bench. I don't know if I'd start him on the bench. And I think if you're looking at this team, right, so he's probably a guy I don't know, 350K. I'm probably not going to start with him round 1. I don't think he's going to be the starter at the Roosters, to be completely transparent. Geimer as well, he's about 300K. So if you're going to start with Geimer, you might as well put him in year 17. So I would move Nongani Tuase on. I would move Geimer up. I would buy a cheap 250K player. And then I would spend that 100K that you free up on upgrading a certain player in your starting side. So potentially looking at Pappenhausen upgrade, potentially looking at Isaiah Papali'i up to Angus Crichton, something in that sort of category there. That's what I do. But right now it's an 8 out of 10 for me. This team is better, 9 out of 10. So you actually do some of the things that I mentioned there. So you got rid of Yo as well, but you've got Harry Grant at hooker. It's a big thing. You've got Crichton there as the vice captain as well. The bench is a bit weaker. So it's a bit of a lighter bench, but these are mostly players who are going to get minutes. Pacific Tonga might not get minutes. Purdue, McLean, a bit iffy as well. But overall, it's a pretty solid side. Now, I like this side better. I've given this a 9 out of 10 just because I really like that forward rotation. I think you can figure it out when it comes to the bench. You do have a bit of money there too. So Kelma Tuolangi, Luke Metcalf, they're guys who are reasonably solid. And if you get really desperate, you can downgrade a guy like Luai or a guy like Pappenhausen and make space. So team 2 is my choice for you, Demetrius Wong. Reminder 2, guys, how to join. Link in the description there. You just jump in there. Then it'll give you the ability to post in the private Discord where you can actually submit your team, and I'll give you a rating on that one as well. Now, Josh Muddle comes up next. It's a pretty interesting side. So Luciano Leilua, shout out to Blindside as well, who made a video on this. But Luciano Pod, it's 560K. He's a guy who's averaged 50 in the past. He's a bit discounted this year. So if Luciano Leilua gets 80 minutes, this is a fantastic pod, but it's only if he gets 80 minutes. So he's in the same bracket as a guy like John Bateman, someone else like Isaiah Papali'i, and there's a bunch of guys in this category. With Luciano, he's a bit cheaper, bit of a lower ceiling, but definitely an interesting option. You got Gus Crichton there and some other interesting pods as well. So Ruben Garrick, Greg Marzu, Harry Grant. Bench is quite deep too. So Tuolangi, Horsburgh, and then, Marmazelis, who's a starter in a lot of teams, and Sandon Smith. Even the rest of the bench here, they should all be starters. Again, just keep an eye on Pacific Tonga. And look, Royce Hunt, he's on the bench this week. So giving the emergencies is a good move as well. All right, nothing special. 7.5 out of 10 for mine. So this one needs a little bit of work. Hopgood as a pod is the first thing to talk about here. Now, for Jermaine Hopgood, the Eels have named him in the trial game this week, which is fantastic news. It means that he's probably pretty fit, right? So just keep that in mind. We were a bit worried about him before that. Now he's been named. I'm keen to see him play. If he looks good, I might bring him into my side as well. A lot of Tigers players here. So moving through Jack Bird, Alex Seyfarth, Royce Hunt. Just keep an eye on their trial game as well. So Jack Bird's been named on the bench. I'm keen to see sort of how he plays off the bench and what he looks like. He passes the eye test and gets named to start round 1. I'm into it. Seyfarth as well. He's got to pass the eye test, and Ruben Porter is floating around. So just keep an eye on that too. McLean, being in your 17 there, so interchange 4 spot for McLean. I'd probably sub him out and bring, Nafu White in, right? Because if you're going to be paying 400K plus for a guy like White, you need to put him in your 17. So swap White into your 17 or potentially move him on, free up some cash and upgrade elsewhere. So 7.5 out of 10 for me. Val's absolute legend. Let's see this team here. Always a funny screenshot as well with the old pictures. So you still got Jack Bird there in the Dragons jersey, which is it's okay, but the Yongi in the Penrith jersey, he's a Parramatta boy now. Let's forget that he ever played for Penrith. So for this side here, look, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, he's a big pod. He's a guy that not many are running with. He's on the wing, so potentially could see a few more sort of open play opportunities. I personally am not super into Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. Jacob Preston is a pod that I like a bit more, but at the same time, if you're around that price point, I prefer Gus Crichton. But they are both fantastic options. And then Sandon Smith, bring him in for Jesse McLean. Again, Jesse McLean's not a guy I'm going to be starting in my 17. He's a guy who, if he gets a starting spot, you put him in your emergency spots and you see how he pans out, because we saw how his brother went, really inconsistent scores, not a guy we wanted in our 17. So 8 out of 10 for me. Probably need to be upgrading Ben Takura. Jacob Laban is one who, if he gets a starting spot, will be in everyone's team. So you're ahead of the curve there. Then YRNJ. So let's see this team here. So Payne Haas, first thing, vice captain. It's an interesting call. So Payne Haas has been named for this trial this week, right? So he had that ankle surgery. He was racing the clock for round 1, all that sort of talk. Now he's been named for this trial game. We'll see how he plays. If he looks good, then he's a guy who could be a serious pod and adds a massive value to your team. If we jump across to the centers there, Bo Firma as well. So Firma's pretty much full price, but he's a guy who can pump out a 50 average at center, and you can just keep him for the whole year. So that buy round 1 does mean you have a bit of a loophole option. So you've got Toya there who can slide into that spot, for example. So you're in a decent position to take advantage of both Firma's buy round 1. The bench is pretty deep too. So Connor Watson, absolute stack, and then Seyfarth, Tuolangi, Sandon Smith. It's a good bench there too. So 8.5 out of 10 for mine. This is a pretty clean roster. It's just got a few question marks, a few risks that you need to look at. Just make sure you watch that Broncos game and watch Payne Haas and let him convince you over the weekend. Jason O. So Adam Fanua-Blake, first thing, sitting right there next to Isaiah Yeo. Bit of talk that Fanua-Blake will play less minutes this year, so keep that in mind. I think he might drop off in terms of fantasy production, so I'm personally not recommending starting with him. Got a couple of Newcastle boys too, so the Knights have a bye in round 4. Bradman Best at center, Greg Marzu at winger fullback. You have to replace those guys in round 4, so you've got Robert Toya there. You have maybe Purdue, but really, as it stands today, you're looking a bit light in the center wing fullback spot for round 4. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to run that, you might want to try and make space for, potentially someone like a Munro, for example, instead of Halasima, or something like that. So you have an extra spare wing fullback or spare center that you can bring into your side. So just keep that in mind for round 4. Other than that, the bench is pretty light. So Mamazelis is there, but then it's pretty much a base price sort of bench. But these are mostly playable guys, so I'm not hating it too much. 8 out of 10 for mine. Unlimited corned beef with a 7 out of 10 team. So a bit of work to do. First thing, I hate seeing that starting edge back row pair. So Gilbert, yeah, all right. He's an all right guy. He's a bit of a filler option in the starting side for 500K. He can pump out a high 40s average if he gets that starting lock spot and plays big minutes. But Jezewski sitting in your starting side is making me feel terrible. I don't like looking at that at all because behind him, you've got maybe Jack Bird you could play in there. Charlie Geimer potentially. You're looking very light in the edge back row spot, and you're going to have to fix that up at some point. The other thing is you've got Connor Watson, who might move to hooker, and you also don't really have backup at middle forward. So my worry here is your forward pack is very light, but you've got Isaiah Yeo as captain. So you kind of got that beefed up a little bit. What I would recommend is potentially looking at moving on one of your centers or wing fullbacks. So you can choose between Bradman Best, Ruben Garrick, Kalen Ponga, and Latrell Mitchell. Move one of those guys on, bring Robert Toya into the starting side, and then use that spare cash to buy an edge back row. That's what I'm going to recommend there. You can't start Jezewski round 1. So Jezewski can be on your bench if you want, but I do not want to see a team starting him round 1 because it puts you in a world of hurt if he gets dropped or plays small minutes and then maybe something happens to Gilbert and you have 2 edge back rowers out for week 2. It would be a very dangerous position to be in. Hunt for Dally M. This is a bold call, Hunt for Dally M, by the way. That's pretty outrageous. And so is Corey Horsburgh as vice captain. Very brave. I think with vice captain, don't overthink it too much. Just pick a guy who you're locked in on and make sure there's someone you're happy to be the vice captain. Make sure there's no injury cloud over that player too. In terms of your bench, it's a pretty deep bench. So a lot of guys you can sort of count on here. So Corey Peggs, Gilbert, White, we've got Sandon Smith, even the rest of the bench there. So Toya, Munro are really nice outside back cover as well. So you've got a pretty balanced roster. John Bateman is a pod I don't mind next to Angus Crichton, but we need to see John Bateman firming for that 80-minute role. So that's the thing to keep in mind. Look, overall, it's a really balanced side, really nice looking side. It's going to change over the next week or two, but right now it's an 8.5 out of 10. So really good spot. And guys, link in the description. I always just got to remind you because I always get asked. So if I don't do this, I get asked a bunch. Link in the description, and you just got to jump on and join the WAP there. And then you can submit your team on Discord. So Jamie, Hemi, let's see this team. So first things first, Jack Bird in emergency 5. That is criminal. It's a waste. If you're going to spend the money on Jack Bird, you need to start him or put him on your bench. You don't have to necessarily start him at center, but you have to at least have him on the bench. He is a scorer for you. Royce Hunt's a guy you could take out very quickly and replace with Jack Bird. So you're in a good spot there. We just need to see Jack Bird named to start for round 1. That's the key. Stephen Crichton, I can see the case. So his average dropped about 10 points last year. Can it bounce back? He did lose those points moving from Penrith to Dogs, though. So Crichton's not a fantastic fantasy scorer. He's a much better player in real life than he is for fantasy. I'm not recommending Stephen Crichton, but if you want to pot up with Stephen Crichton, you're absolutely welcome to do it. In terms of the back line, it's very heavy, very solid back line. So guys like Garrick there, Ponga, Pappenhausen, we can trust Yongi as well. So you're in a good spot there. And then, the forward pack's pretty solid too. So there's just a few things we can change up. That Jack Bird thing is a big one. I'm not sure about Martin in emergency 7 spot, getting any minutes, or Pacific Tonga. So just keep an eye on those two. But overall, 8 out of 10, really solid side. Now, Pahi Driver with an 8.5 out of 10. So it's a good roster. Again, Mitch Barnett, he's a bit of a pod, right? So most teams aren't getting onto him. He's an interesting one. We really want to see him earn that big minutes role. But him and Fisher Harris, they probably can't both play huge minutes. So there is a bit of risk to Barnett. He's historically not been that fantastic, but he should theoretically soak up big minutes in this Warriors pack. So I like the pod. Forward pack's really good. If we jump down to wing fullback, Blaze Talangi's down there. He's pretty cheap. So I think it's 458K. Starting in the halves for Penrith. Should have some big attacking upside week to week. So he'll be a guy who, he'll have some really quiet games, some really big games, I think. The bench is really solid as well. So Bo Firma sitting in that interchange 4 spot in particular. That's an interesting one because you've already got Garrick there. So maybe you move Garrick into the wing fullbacks, but it's a very deep set of outside backs you got here because you've also got Tamale and Tyrone Munro sitting there too. So you're in a pretty good position as far as covering different injuries or buys or that sort of thing. And Ruben Garrick is that dual position as well. So I like the look of the outside backs. The forward pack's pretty solid too. Gilbert backs up both positions there. So overall, really well constructed roster. 77K in the bank is a good amount too. So 8.5 out of 10 for me. Then we got It's Benji with an 8 out of 10. Harry Grant is the hidden player, by the way. You can't see the hooker. So we got Harry Grant sitting up there. Look, forward pack's really good. So, yeah, running through Yo, May, Horsburgh, Gilbert, Barnett against a really solid forward pack. We've got the light centers, which my team currently looks like this. I have the Jack Bird, Robert Toya center pairing. We'll see how that goes. Halves are good. Latrell, Marzu, that's interesting. I haven't seen too many with Latrell and Marzu, but I like them both as individual players. Latrell is very expensive though, so I don't know. I'm not really super keen on Latrell, but at the same time, he can pop off massive scores. Bench a bit sus, so Noani Tawase and Royce Hunt. Even Duffy is all right for a fourth bench spot, but he's probably not meant to be a second guy. So look, Mama Zealous, you bring him up into interchange 3, and then you probably bring Jazewski into interchange 4. It's just a bit dicey, right? So you probably want to try to find a way at some point. Don't force it now, but at some point to try and free up a little bit of cash to upgrade Noani Tawase to someone who's a little bit better than he is. Because I think 350K is a bit too expensive for what he's going to be, and he might not be the starter round 1. And then Aussie, Matt, I'm sorry. I've got to drop a 6.5 out of 10 for you here. So Matty Burton, captain. I love the poddiness of it. I love that you're going for it. I respect that. But it's not a good decision. I don't normally go this hard line. I like, if you want to do it, do it. I've got to always put that caveat in. If you really believe, then you're a believer. Go and do it. I just don't think it's the way to do it. Round 1, going away from Nathan Cleary or Isaiah Yo or one of these guys, Matt Burton captain is pretty outrageous. So I'm marking you down for it. But if you go and do it and it works, I will absolutely give you all the credit. I'll eat humble pie. Like, you're the guy. In terms of the rest of the team here, so you got a lot of halves. So obviously Cleary, Burton, but then also Sandon Smith, Luke Metcalf, Tom Duffy, and the wing fullback spot is pretty heavy as well. So Yongi, Ponga, Tyrone Munro, and then Pappenhausen on the bench too. So yeah, just keep that in mind with McLean as well. So you've invested quite heavily in the back line. The forward pack is not looking too bad considering the investment you've made. But I would say as you get closer to the season, you might want to move a little bit of money back into your forward pack and out of your back line. So just keep that in mind. Look, overall, 6.5 out of 10. I can't rate the Burton thing. In terms of forecasting points, I think it's a pretty low points forecast move, but it does have that 2% chance of popping off for you. So if you want to do it, stick with it, man. Then Jax here, we got an 8.1 out of 10. Added the 0.1 because he's a legend. But let's see this team here. So Avarillo, big pod here, or Rillo as he's called. Look, Avarillo has been named in the centers for this trial game this week. So I think the chances of him doing what you want there and playing in the centers, playing in the halves, is probably pretty unlikely. We've also got Isaac Tungo in this team too. So the center pairing is pretty dicey. A couple of guys between 450 to 500K. Probably not two guys I want to start with, but definitely two guys who do have upside. So completely up to you. If you're into them, then jump on. But I'm not super keen on those two. Your wing fullbacks. So Ponga and Marzu, they're both going to miss round 4. So I'm looking to your bench and sort of seeing how you're going to cover this. And you've got Tyrone Munro. And that's it. So as it stands, you will be one wing fullback short in round 4. So you probably don't want to run 2 Newcastle wing fullbacks. You probably want to pick one of those two. Potentially removing Marzu and or Ponga and sort of upgrading at center spot or upgrading in a different position instead. So keep that in mind. And then I'll just throw in Alex Seyfarth, Jack Bird as well. Just keep an eye on them this week's trial. Seyfarth is battling for a starting edge spot. Jack Bird is battling for a starting lock spot. If they win them, fantastic. If they look good in those games, even better. But if they don't, you're going to have to be ready to make some different moves. So 8.1 out of 10 for this one. Ruck around and find out. 8.5 out of 10. Really strong side. So we're stepping up to a good side here. And always a funny team name as well with Ruck around and find out. First things first, I just want to jump to the interchange. So Cam Murray on the bench, backing up Terrell May, Isaiah Yo, Connor Watson. It's a very strong set of middle forwards. There's quite a few teams coming through today that have that strong middle forward set. So I don't mind that. I like the light centers there. Toya, Jack Bird. you either go Toya Jack Bird, or you go say Jack Bird and you add a pod, right? But the Toya Jack Bird thing, it frees up a lot of cash. So it's where I'm leaning right now, but I might change my mind closer to round one. In terms of the halves there, so Cleary, Munster, and then we go to Metcalf, Sandon Smith, Duffy. Again, just keep that in mind. You've got a very deep set of halves. Make sure you're covering the other positions as well. Make sure you're ready for the major buy rounds, because, well, not major buy rounds, the buys in the first few rounds, because the first 4 weeks, there's a few teams missing games. So just keep that in mind. I would probably be looking at selling Cam Murray, though. All right. So for Cam Murray, he's in doubt for round one. If he stays in doubt for round one, if he's a bit iffy, he's probably going to come in on smaller minutes. They've got Talis Duncan, they've got Kolomatangi, they've got guys who can steal some minutes off him as well. So for Cam Murray, I'm not super keen on him. He hasn't been named in this trial either. So yeah, I would skip Cam Murray personally. And then Ned Flanders. So with this team, we've got Blake Braley at hooker, which is interesting. Big pod there. Wilton is a big pod. Matt Burton's a big pod. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck's a big pod. Reece Walsh is a big pod. Kobe Hetherington's a big pod. And Sam Hughes is another big pod. On those pods, look, it's up to you, man. If you like these guys, you like these guys, and you can go for it 100%. I can't say no to any of them, really. So Blake Braley, I think he's priced about what he's worth. He could potentially make the leap this year and be a better player. Teague Wilton, second year back from injury, so I can see the upside there. I don't think it's going to be huge upside, but there should be some upside. Matt Burton, young guy, developing, has the goal kicking, has the major kicking. Again, could be a guy who develops a bit. Down the bottom, Reece Walsh, they've got additional playmakers, and Ben Hunt, they should be a better team this year, so I can see that. RTS on the wing, I'm not a believer, but again, moving from center to wing, I can kind of see that. And then Kobe Hetherington starting at lock. Look, I get it. Sam Hughes is the one that I'm going to say no to. He could develop, but just wasn't it so annoying having him last year? Like, do you really want to do it again this year? The other one to talk about is Josh Papali'i. So he's the backup fullback at Parramatta right now. If he wins the starting spot, ace, awesome. Go get him. But if he doesn't win the starting spot, don't. And then you got to set yourself a captain. So probably go, I mean, you've got a pretty pod heavy team, so you're probably going to captain like Reece Walsh or someone crazy, but I would recommend captaining Nathan Cleary personally. So a quick reminder how to join, link in the description. You guys know the drill. Chinatown 123248. So for this side here, you've got Lucas in that edge spot. It does give you a bit of flexibility, right? So you've got Jack Bird, Toya in your center spots, and if you ever get in trouble, you can move Lucas down to center. You can move Gilbert into the second row. I'm just sort of working through rotations here. You're in a pretty good spot in terms of one layer of cover. Forward pack's really good. You've got Latrell Mitchell, Ryan Pappenhausen down the bottom as well. So good set of wing fullbacks. I would just probably talk about, Cole. I don't think Cole's going to be the starter round one. I think it's going to be Blaise Talangi. So you can keep him in there as a placeholder for another base price player, but I wouldn't be counting on him as a guy that you're going to be using through the season. So you've got him in that bottom emergency spot. So I'm sure you're already across this, but that would be the key thing. Be ready to replace him with someone else. So overall, 8.5 out of 10. You've obviously thought out this team, and it's in a good position. It's a good structure. I like it quite a bit. Then Clarkey. So let's see this team, because again, another one with Dylan Lucas in the edge spot. Again, it gives you that flexibility, but what worries me here is you've used that to go and buy Isaac Tungo. And look, Tungo is a classic bounce back candidate. So the years before last year, he averaged 42 and 49 points. So theoretically, he should bounce back. You also don't have Luai there, and Luai was sort of shutting Tungo down a bit too. So theoretically, it works. I get it. But don't you just hate looking at it? That's kind of where my head's at. Like, I get it. I see the appeal. He should bounce back. I'm not saying sell him at all. He makes sense, but I almost want to see it first. And I don't normally say this. This isn't normally my angle on things, but with him, he was just such a tease last year, Tungo, that I want to see some form first before I even think about buying him, which I probably won't do this year. In terms of the rest of the team here, look, forward pack's really solid, so that middle forward set is nice. The edge back row is solid enough, but then you got Corey Horsburgh, Tom Gilbert there on the bench too. So you got a lot of backup for your forward pack. Overall, really nicely structured roster. Again, Latrell, Marzu is really good. You've got the cover for Marzu there with McLean. Fingers crossed. You've also got, it's probably only really one piece of cover. So you might want to make a move and potentially move Royce Hunt out for Munro or something like that, right? To add an extra wing fullback, just to give yourself a bit more cover in case someone gets hurt or Marzu goes on a bye or whatever it is there. So 8.5 out of 10. That's just the one change I'd recommend. And then Michael, it's a pretty crazy pod team. So Mazu, Olakawatu, big pods. We've got Paddy Carrigan in the vice captain spot. He's a major pod. We've got Stephen Crichton as a pod. Ponga and Latrell stack again. Jesse Arthur's another big pod. And then what hurt me to see was Blake Rayleigh in the emergency 5 spot. Because we don't spend money on the emergencies, guys. So keep it pretty much under 300K for your emergencies. Blake Brayley, you got to put him in the starting side there. So Blake Brayley into the starting hooker spot, and then Marmazelis into the interchange 4 spot. Royce Hunt, get him out. For that reason, I had to give you a 6 out of 10. Once you fix that up, it'll probably bump up to like an 8 out of 10. But that just hurt me too much. I had to throw you the 6. So I'm sorry, Michael. Make that change, and you'll be in a good spot. Rolly. So Rolly's team here is really strong in the forward pack. You've got the big gun approach here. So we talked about strategies here on YouTube before, but what you got here is a stack of Cleary and Nico Hines in the halves, then Isaiah Yeo, and then you jump down to the bottom and you have Latrell Mitchell sitting with the captain jersey on. So that's a big pod. You've got RTS, Junior Tupou, Jacob Preston as well. It's a very pod-heavy team with the gun stack strategy. I don't know how I feel about it. So on the one hand, there are some things that need fixing, right? The Junior Tupou thing, I don't think he's going to start round 1, so that needs fixing. On the other hand, it's very different to what anyone else is doing. So if this pays off, it could potentially be meteoric for you, but it's very, very high risk. For that reason, I've given you a 7.5 out of 10. But if you like this strategy, mate, 100%, like just chat in Discord. Tell me what you're thinking with this strategy, because I'm not telling you it's completely wrong. It's just very different to what anyone else is doing. And I'm a bit iffy on a few of these guys like RTS, Nico Hines in particular, and Junior Tupou. So yeah, look, 7.5 out of 10, but it's a very bold, interesting team, and I actually enjoyed rating it. Wilso, 8.5 out of 10. So some pods here too, a bit more sensible with your pods. So James Fisher-Harris makes sense. He's a PPM guy. Jaden Campbell sitting on your bench there in interchange 4. He's a guy who should do a bunch of kicking if he's next to AJ Brimson. We got Lucas on the bench, but he has that dual position, so he can sub into emergency and center. So that gives you a bit of cover. And then, yeah, the forward pack is really deep too. So really strong starting forward pack, a bit of cover there in Lucas and Gilbert. You're in a good position here. So this is an 8.5 out of 10, very balanced roster. And then Money Baggio. So for this one, round 2 is going to be hard. So you've got Pappenhausen and Jack Howarth, who will both be on the bye in round 2. So I go to your bench, and I'm looking for guys to cover wing, fullback, and center. I see Munro for wing fullback. I see Yongi for wing fullback. I see Toya for center. So it gives you just enough cover, right? But, we know how Jack Bird is. He can pick up an injury. He might not start round 1. There's a few things to sort of keep in mind here that are a little bit worrying. Toya, does he keep a spot? There's a bit of competition for that spot. Overall, there's a bit too much worry with the 2 Storm players for round 2. That's just one thing I'm a bit concerned about. And I personally don't think that Pappenhausen and Howarth are enough of a must-have pair to go through this challenge. So I would personally try to get rid of one of those guys. Hetherington's a big pod, but if he plays well in the trial this week, I'll consider this one. The bench is really solid, and then the minutes are up for grabs. So guys like Gilbert, Bateman, we talk about these sorts of players, Jack Bird, Nafu White, do they get the minutes, Hetherington, that they need to score well in fantasy, or don't they? That's the big question. So 7.5 out of 10. Then Den, 8 out of 10 team here. So really strong forward pack. Beast mode, Dylan Lucas. You got Selwyn Cobbo as a massive pod. Nwangani Tawase as a starter is, I don't think he's going to start round 1. That's just my guess, but we don't know what goes on with the Roosters. I'm assuming Billy Smith will be healthy and jump into that spot. The bench is a bit shallow too. So again, Marmazelis is your bench captain. Then you got a bunch of guys who are super, super cheap. So you kind of want to strengthen the bench just a little bit, add one extra quality player, someone like a Kelma Talangi or, a Gilbert or one of those types of players. So that's what I keep in mind there. But Humphreys is an interesting pod. If he's named on the bench in round 1, he could potentially have that Tyron Wishart arc this year. So I actually don't mind that if he's named on the bench round 1. We'll get to see him play off the bench this week. So trial will be interesting to watch. Anyway, guys, that is Rate My Team done and dusted. Link below if you want to enter your team. Otherwise, join us on Discord. There's also a bunch of free communities where you can just chat. We do game day threads, all that sort of thing too. So I've enjoyed having you on, and I'll see you guys on the next one.